So now we're going to look at the dynamics of the foreign exchange market. So the first question is, what determines the exchange rate under a floating rate system? Usually you have three types of system in the foreign exchange market. Either it can be floating, or it can be pegged, or it can be a mixture of both of them, which is called a managed float. So in a floating rate system, basically the prices are being set through the forces of demand and supply. There is no government intervention at all. Now we're going to discuss each of them separately and then together. So the demand for pounds. So we're going to take the example of pounds. We have quantity of pounds and we have the price of pounds, dollar per pound over here. You can see that like any other commodity, the foreign exchange market, the demand and price have an inverse relationship. That means when the price of pound goes up, the quantity demanded is going to decline. So the demand for products in the foreign exchange market shows a negative relationship between the price and the quantity of pounds. Like any other commodity, that is the same case, because when the price goes up, the thing becomes too expensive, and because of that, demand falls. So in the foreign exchange market, what will happen that when the price of the pound falls, so now we're assuming that the price is going downwards. If it's going downwards, that means that the demand will be increasing. What happens is that the British made goods and services appear to be less expensive to US buyers. We're assuming that there are only two countries, one is British and the other is US. So if the British pound it comes down in value, the products of British pound they become cheaper, and what will happen that the US people will start to import things from British, and if they're importing, then they will have to give the payment in pound. So you can see why the quantity demanded of pound is going to increase. If British prices are constant, US buyers will buy more British goods and services, and the quantity demanded of pounds will rise. It is the same concept that you have studied for any other commodity. Similarly, supply and price have a positive relationship. That means that when the price goes up, so does the supply. So the supply of pounds in the foreign exchange market shows a positive relationship between the price of pounds and the quantity of pounds supplied. Now let's understand this. When the price of pound rises, the British can obtain more dollars for each pound. Okay, but now because the pound is rising in value, so it has a lot of value. If you convert pound into dollar, you will get more dollars because the pound has gone up in value. That means that it has strengthened. And if you convert it, you will get more dollars. So that would mean that the US made goods and services appear less expensive to British buyers. Now it's the opposite impact. So people who are in Britain now, because the pound has become more strengthened, it has strengthened, it has appreciated, then what happens is that now they can easily afford the things in US. It's the other way around, because if pound goes up in value, that means that the dollar is depreciating against it. So because of that, now for Britain, it is for the British buyers, it is easier for them, it is less expensive for them if they import more. And if they are importing, then they are giving in a supply of pounds in the market because they will be paying in pounds. So the quantity of pounds supplied is likely to rise with the exchange rate. Now, how is the equilibrium price set? The equilibrium price is set where demand and supply actually meet. Like you can see over here. So the equilibrium exchange rate occurs at the point at which the quantity demanded of a foreign currency equals the quantity of that currency supplied. An excess supply of pounds will cause the price of pounds to fall. The pound will depreciate with respect to the dollar. So if over here you can see the supply is more than demand, then the price is going to go down. Because remember, when supply increases, prices tend to fall. This is the same supply and demand rule that you have studied before. And an excess demand, so if demand is greater then supply, you can see that the price will go up to the equilibrium, it will appreciate. So this is how the price is set in the foreign exchange market. If it's a floating market, it's completely left onto demand and supply. Now, there are factors that actually affect this demand and supply. First, you need to understand the law of one price for this. Basically, the law of one price states that the price of the same good in different countries should be roughly the same. And if this law does hold for all goods, then each country consume the same market basket of goods. Exchange rate between the two currencies would be determined simply by relative price levels in the two countries. It simply means that, for example, if you can purchase football, let's say from the US for $10, and you can purchase them from Britain for, let's say, $12. Now, if the commodity is same, so we're talking about football, which is essentially the same type of football in both places, then the exchange rate can be found out by simply dividing them. The exchange rate should be this much. But if the exchange rate is something different, then that would lead to a change in demand and supply, and it will go back to the exchange rate that it should be. For example, if this is not the case, for example, if the exchange rate is actually $1 to even a pound one, if this is the exchange rate, then that would mean that it would be cheaper to purchase the football in US and then sell it in Britain, because over there you can sell it at a higher price. Sorry, it should be pound over here. You can sell it at a higher price in Britain. So what will happen? Everybody will start to purchase over here. Because of that, there will um, so because they want to import, this will drive up the demand of US dollars. Everybody would want US dollars in order to purchase the US football, which will drive up the exchange rate. So the exchange rate will adjust and the law of one price should hold. But in reality, there are multiple reasons due to which it does not hold. For example, transportation cost, and potentially you cannot find identical products in a lot of categories. For example, Rolls-Royce and Honda both are cars, but they are of a different category, so the price will not be equal. But for this purpose, they have actually come up with a Big Mac index. I want all of you to search this and to read about it. Basically, Big Mac index, it compares the prices of Big Mac over different countries in order to figure out which country, which currency is undervalued or overvalued, and so figure out that where should the exchange rate movement be. Now, what is purchasing power parity? The theory that exchange rates are set so that the price of similar goods in different countries is the same is known as the purchasing power parity. Basically, purchasing power parity says, it's a theory that states that if you can buy a similar basket of goods in one country, you should be able to buy that same basket by in another country as well at the same price. So, for example, if you can buy something for $100 over here, and if the exchange rate is 1.2, you should be able to purchase the same basket of goods in another country for 1200. Oh, sorry, for 120. So this is purchasing power parity. However, this does not hold true in a lot of cases, like already discussed, because of different multiple reasons. But it is important to understand purchasing power parity because a lot of concepts are become clear if you understand this. For example, if you look at inflation, a high rate of inflation in one country relative to another puts pressure on the exchange rate between the two countries, and there is a general tendency for the currencies of relatively high inflation countries to depreciate. Okay, so if the country has a lot of inflation, the country's currency becomes weaker. It is likely to depreciate. A high price level in the United States increases the demand for pounds. What happens when the price levels, when there is inflation in a country and you can see the dollars cannot purchase a lot, you will shift to the other currency that is not depreciating that much. So people will start to demand pounds. So you can see that the demand for pounds is going to shift this way and decreases the supply of pounds. And from the other side, the supply of pounds is decreasing. So it's going this way. Okay, wait, sorry. Okay, now why is the supply of pounds decreasing? Basically, the supply of pounds is decreasing because the British see now the US goods as more expensive. So they do not want to import more of the US goods. Their own products will be cheaper because US products are more expensive due to inflation. So because of that, the supply of pound is going to decrease. And you can see that this is going to be the new exchange rate. Now, moving ahead, similarly, interest rates usually do also have an impact on the exchange rate. So, the level of a country's interest rate relative to interest rate in other countries is another determinant of the exchange rate. If the US interest rate rises relative to British interest rate, what will happen? Investors would be more willing to invest in the US market. That means that dollars demand will go up. So, higher interest rate in the United States increases the supply of pounds and decreases the demand for pounds because now the demand for dollars have actually increased and people want to keep their money over there. So, the result is depreciation of the pound against the dollar. So, usually, if the country's interest rate is more, the value of the currency also goes up, it appreciates. Okay, so I'm not going in too much detail because your guest speaker session was based on foreign exchange markets, and I think it was covered in quite detail. So I'm going to end this discussion over here.